and welcome to episode number 59 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam.
I'm Sahil.
And we want to be the first to say, well, maybe not the first to say, but the first podcast, certainly, to congratulate our good friend Zane on his engagement. We're very excited for him and Jenna. We got the news earlier today on the day of recording, and we're all just really happy for him and wishing him the best of luck.
Yeah, very excited. I know Zane kind of gave us a little preview last week when you, me, and a few others were in New York. We got to do a celebratory shot for, not shot, beer glass clinking, whatever that's called.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you. This is why I have a co-host.
Toast is a better word, actually.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
anyway.
For him. But incredibly excited for him. And we'll see which one the next of us that gets married off.
Yeah, the way he phrased that was the first M-SABR wedding. So I'm excited for all the rest of them.
No, absolutely.
Excited to see who the first M-SABR person is to have multiple weddings. I'm gonna guess Greg.
I don't know, man. Greg this past weekend was like, "Look at me. Do you think I'm ever gonna get married?" And I was like,
Oof, I did not hear him say that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was the man. What was the pink thing?
Pink Whitney.
The Pink Whitney. Yeah, maybe
it was his. He also did the full chumba.
He did do the full chumba. Oh man. But yeah, congratulations, Zane. We'll have to get Jenna on the podcast with him soon.
Well, we have plans in February.
We do. We do have plans in February.
Very excited. Yeah, very excited for them. It's now going to be great. And we're all very happy for them, and hopefully we're all invited.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully we're invited, and I could use this wedding as an excuse to make some more trade talks. So,
because that's what this is all about.
Yeah, I mean, would you expect anything less from me? On my wedding day, I might literally interrupt my wedding to respond to an offer, or I'm going to be up there getting married, and somebody's going to be making a trade, and there's going to be a Slack notification. You're going to be on the other side of the room, and I'm going to be like, "Hey, Cam, what are your thoughts on this sort of podcast? We need to discuss this now."
Oh God, that'll be for whatever episode number that is.
God, yeah, we're talking episode 100 and something, 200 and something. God knows.
God knows.
A while from now, but now speaking of significant events, a year ago yesterday, so we're recording this on the 20th, so December 19th was the league's 300th trade.
Oh, that was if I recall correctly, it was a nothing trade, right?
It was a swap of third round picks, just so Eric and I could say that we were the ones who made the 300 trade. We'll be
hitting 400 kind of soon, sometime this offseason.
Yeah, we've made 85 trades since then, so 15 more and we'll hit 400. I'm sure that'll be done before the end of this offseason. We have now made this offseason 22 trades. Well off the pace of last offseason, but that's all right. I think we might hit something in the 40-ish, 50-ish range by the time this offseason's over. And so I think we should hit 400. Well, we'll do something special for that as well. But we're doing this a little out of order this week. Usually we start off with the trades and then we jump into our segments. We've decided in the spirit of Christmas to start with our Christmas segment first. Cam, do you want to explain what the Christmas segment is?
Yeah, so basically what we're doing, a Merry Christmas to us all. Last year we had this segment planned, but it was kind of derailed by Hurricane Conor swooping in and making us talk all about that. And we've actually got Conor on later in the podcast to talk about the fallout of Hurricane Connor and his crazy deadline and his his run to the finals and his off season. But basically, this is a segment we wanted to do last year where we give one thing that's on each team's Christmas list, one player that every team we think should have on their list and hope for under the tree this year. So it's going to be a lot of fun and maybe spark some discussion because that's what we really want.
Absolutely. And it does seem like between you, Connor, Yuki, it looks like the market's getting a little hot right now. And definitely me. I've definitely been kickstarting this market. I feel like I have to do everything for you all. But
yeah, rumor has it I made a very bold offer a couple minutes ago.
Yes, I can confirm that rumor because I heard it directly from the source. So but yeah, let's get started with this Christmas segment. We're going to start bottom up. The first team on our list is Daniel and Greg, and we are giving them or saying that they have Jarren Duran on their Christmas list. Jarren Duran is currently sitting on EBO's minor league team. He had 107 at bats in the majors this year. Didn't go too great, but there's still a lot of potential there. Alex and Zach, Daniel and Greg have talked about acquiring another bat all off season. They're a team that needs to get younger. They don't have a ton in the farm, so I feel like Duran is kind of a good fit there to add a young bat with some potential. And given his slow start in 2021, I don't think the cost is going to be all that ridiculous.
Yeah, I really don't think it would be all that ridiculous. And they can really, I think there are a lot of prospects that this team could go for. Their rebuilding, but they certainly have some guys who could fetch a decent prospect return. So whether it's Duran or anyone else, we just know that Duran is someone who is available. And he's got that speed. I think he'd be a good get for them. And I think this team definitely needs to build up a farm system.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's I would say it's definitely in the bottom half.
Yeah, and picking fourth after having the worst record in the league last year is not going to be super helpful for them.
No, yeah, it's definitely kind of a bummer for them how the lottery worked out. But next up is the team with the number one overall pick, and that is Yuki. And under Yuki's tree, I think he very badly wants Luis Patino. And I know this for a fact because he and I had talked quite a bit about Luis Patino. Ultimately, I traded him to Alex and Zach yesterday. We'll get into that trade later on the podcast, but Luis Patino checks a few marks for Yuki. One, he needs a little more starting pitcher depth, especially after losing Maeda to Tommy John and Clayton Kershaw to some ominous injury that nobody really understands the extent of. And it'd be nice to have somebody for him to pair with, like Ian Anderson, Luis Garcia, and Cal Quantrill top his young rotation. And he's a Ray, and we know how much Yuki loves Rays. Maybe even more than the Diamondbacks nowadays, the way he talks about the Rays. I wouldn't be surprised if they moved up to his favorite team. But any thoughts on Patino, Cam? I know you've listened to me talk about Luis Patino like 1,000 times to the point where you thought I was going to keep him.
Yeah, he feels like a natural fit for Yuki. He's a guy we know he wants, and he might be a little easier to get from Alex than from you.
Yeah, no, for Yuki's sake, I hope so. Let's move on to Andrew. Andrew, we say under his tree or on his Christmas list, he wants Nestor Cortez Jr.
Junior.
Yeah.
Second of the Nestor's Cortez.
Second of the Nestor's Cortez. I wonder if Nestor Cortez, I think he might have pitched. I don't know if he was in the majors, but I think he pitched in like Cuban ball for many years. But yeah, funnily enough, Nestor Cortez Jr. has made his major league debuts with the Orioles as a Rule 5 draft pick. He might have also been a Rule 5 draft pick for the Mariners.
He was
No.
not. He was traded for international money.
Yeah, no, never signed. Okay. Nestor Cortez, we had a maybe a season that flew a bit under the radar. He had a 9.97 K per nine, 2.4 walk per nine, a 290 ERA, and 93 innings, 14 starts, 22 games. The Yankees don't have a ton of rotation depth, so I think they might give him a little bit more of a run in the rotation next year. And Andrew needs starting pitchers. I think Andrew really likes his farm system right now. And so I don't think he's willing to give up a whole bunch for starters. So I think that this could be an interesting fit. And Cortez has just turned 27 earlier this month. So, he's still on the younger side and could be on Andrew's next competing team.
Yeah, I think so. You don't normally see teams asking for relievers under the tree if they're rebuilding, but I think Nestor Cortez is a solid reliever. I think he'd fit well in this team. And again, he's not a guy I think would cost too much for a team like Andrew, who, really the timeline was definitely shifted ahead a year or so. This team could maybe compete a little bit sooner than we thought they might.
Yeah, and I certainly think Cortez has a good chance of being used as a starter here too. So, but even if he is a reliever, I think he could be really impactful out of that pen. Next up is Alex and Zach's team, and under their Christmas tree, we think they want Adam Frazier. Since this is your player, I'll let you talk first. Explain the logic behind this.
Yeah, so Adam Frazier, he's a guy who's got multiple position eligibility. And he had a little bit of a breakout year this year. He had a 368 on base. He stole 10 bases. He can play second base and outfield, which are both definitely valuable positions, but also positions where I feel strongly about who I have already there. I know he struggled a little bit down the stretch once he got to San Diego. Struggled a little bit is an understatement, but I think with him in Seattle now, he's certainly a guy that this team could take a chance on. And again, he's another guy who won't cost a ton. None of these teams so far have been splurging on their Christmas presents, but I think, yeah, he's a good fit.
Yeah, I largely agree with everything that you said. I think that, Alex and Zach have made it pretty clear this offseason they want to upgrade in the middle infield. I feel like, Adam Frazier, if he performs like he did the first half of the season, is definitely an upgrade for them. And I think given how he finished the season, I don't think he's going to be terribly expensive to get. And I think he could easily be an upgrade on, the likes of Jonathan VR or potentially, although I do like VR steals.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, who are his other names here? I think he could be an upgrade over Hassan Kim. He could definitely be an upgrade over Nick Solak. I think those are more of the names rather than VR. I'd say he's probably upgrades over, but yeah, just getting another option there would be good. Let's move on to the next team. Ruthvik and Nick on their Christmas list. A little bigger name this time, Kyle Schwarber.
Kyle Schwarber.
Yeah. Why don't you explain the logic here?
Yeah, so according to you, and you're more in on the rumors than I am, Kyle Schwarber is someone that this team likes. I think that they definitely, you and I think, Ruthvik doesn't agree, but he needs more supporting players. He's got his stars. His stars are as good as anyone else's stars, but his supporting cast is very iffy. His secondary hitters, and he could really use a guy like Schwarber, who had a lot of power this year. When he was with Washington, he carried it over to Boston, became a fan favorite there pretty quickly. And I think, especially at first base, this is the position he needs, and I think Schwarber could fit well.
Yeah, I agree. I think he needs bats all over the place, whether first base, whether the outfield. And I think that Schwarber would fit in nicely at both of those places. I don't think, despite the solid year that he had, I think given his track record and the injury that he suffered during the year, I think the price is going to be at a decent enough level where he could go out and get him and feel comfortable about what he's giving up and like not have to break the bank, but still get a guy with a lot of upside who could be a real quality hitter. I feel like you said, this team has the studs. They have the Acuna, there's Bregman, there's Devers, and we'll see how Glaber does, but there's not a ton beyond that. There's a couple of guys I like for the upside, but I think they definitely need some more depth there. And I think Schwarber is really a name who could fit there. Let's move on to the next team here. That's Clayton and Jake. And under their Christmas tree, we think they want Logan Gilbert. Logan Gilbert, I think, is had a little bit of an under the radar year. It was a little bit up and down, but the peripherals were really solid. I think he has a lot of potential here as a top 25 prospect on Fangraphs going into last year, 55 FV. I personally think he could quickly establish himself as a strong number 2 behind Robbie Ray for the Mariners next year. Alex has put him on the trade block. I know Jake and Clayton have traded away a couple of their top prospects over the past year, like Marco Luciano and Tristan Casas, but I do think they have enough depth in the farm where if they were really motivated to make a move, that they had the pieces to get him.
Yeah, I think Logan Gilbert, he's a guy, he was a rookie this past year. He's got that big upside. He's one of the top prospects for the Mariners and one of the top pitching prospects overall. I had the pleasure of seeing him pitch this summer. He had flashes where he looked really good. On the whole, he didn't pitch amazingly, but that certainly wouldn't discourage me from going after him. I think he'd fit well with this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Let's move on to Anthony's team. We believe that under his Christmas tree, Anthony would want Jesus Aguilar. Why don't you start this time, Cam? Explain the logic behind us picking him.
Yeah, so Anthony's another team that needs a first baseman. Who does he have starting at first? He has, he's got Carlos Santana, who really had a down year. Miguel Sano, he hit 30 homers, but really didn't do much else. And then Lamonte Wade, I'm not sure if he's going to retain that eligibility. Dom Smith, he wasn't as good this past year. So he's got a few first basemen, quite a few first basemen, but none of whom are really all that inspiring. Jesus Aguilar, you could say that he's a fifth guy who's not all that inspiring, but also I would call him an upgrade. He drives in a lot of runs. And maybe, I don't know, he's with them building a little bit of a better lineup, trying to, at least in Miami, he could continue to drive in runs and score runs and be a solid first base option.
Yeah, I don't think the cost would be too high here. And I mean, he did drive in 93 runs last year in a weaker Miami lineup than the one that's going to be there this year. I mean, you're looking at, them having already added Avisal Garcia and Joey Wensleydale and Jacob Stallings. And they're, rumored to be on a bunch of different bats, Michael Conforto, Nick Castellanos, the list goes on and on. So I think this could be a bit of a better lineup. I think those RBI numbers could be high. And I do think there's a little more upside there with him than like Carlos Santana. And I think, like, for example, him and Dom Smith would kind of be a good pair next year, where I think, Aguilar brings a little more stability with a lower ceiling, but Dom Smith has the higher ceiling, but there's a lot of variance given like playing time and performance, etc. So I like this pairing for Anthony. Let's move on to EBO here. Under EBO's tree, we predict that they want on their Christmas list Joey Bart.
Yeah, this is one we've kind of been plugging for a long time now, haven't we?
Yeah, I feel like we've been doing this with a couple different catchers, and I think we could have just as easily put Kyber Ruiz or Tyler Stevenson on this list as well for them. But ever since he traded Wilson Contreras away, it's been pretty obvious they're not rostering a catcher right now. And in fact, I don't even think they have one under a minor league team. They don't.
I don't think so. They're punting catchers, which is certainly interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I remember I was Zane last year and he traded for Contreras. He was like, thank God I finally got my catcher. He's like, they've been, cycling through them forever. And that he finally gets one, and then he trades him away earlier in the offseason when he thought he might be rebuilding a bit more. And, I don't know. But I feel like Joey Bart, yes, he is going to get the playing time, but I feel like he's a little bit of that post-hype kind of prospect right now where he might be able to get him at a little bit of a discount. And I know Connor kind of needs to move him. So it feels like a good fit. And if not, I feel like enough teams have multiple capture options right now where I think he could acquire one pretty easily if he'd want to, really look into trade market.
Yeah, I think so. He could definitely find a catcher from Connor, from Andrew, from really a lot of these teams. It's not too hard to find a catcher out there.
Yeah, don't forget from Yuki too. King of catchers. Although
the king of catchers.
I did kind of W the new king of catchers earlier in the chat this week. So
you did. Maybe we can make the king of catchers belt where if a team beats me, they become the new king of catchers.
Does that mean they get Adley?
No.
Damn. Because I'd do everything in my power to beat you if that was the case. But maybe one day. Speaking of you are the next team on my list. And we're giving you a big name because you're a big boy underneath your Christmas tree. You are a big boy, so maybe you don't believe in Santa anymore. So maybe you don't deserve anything under your tree. But we're being nice anyway. We're giving you Bryce Harper.
All right. Give me Bryce Harper.
Yeah. Why don't you explain this a bit? Because I know Bryce Harper's a name that you inquired on in the past. Yuki owns him right now. Why don't you explain why this would work for your team?
Yeah, Bryce Harper's a name I inquire on a lot. I think he'd really fit well into my lineup. He'd fit well in anyone's lineup. He's one of the best hitters in baseball. I'd love to consolidate a little bit of talent for another top bat such as Bryce Harper. And I think I have the pieces to do it. Yuki in particular is not interested in Kelnick, which I was thinking he'd be a centerpiece of that deal. I think normally he would be seen as a centerpiece of that deal, along with other pieces, of course. It wouldn't be a 1-for-1. So if I got Bryce Harper, I would need to be a little more creative than that. I don't know how I would do it. It might involve Shane McClanahan. But anyway, I want Bryce Harper.
Here's what you should do. Go out and get Shane Baz, go out and get Luis Patino and package them with McClanahan or Bruhan.
Yeah.
He trades Harper. Literally anything for Rays. I literally think this man would murder somebody for a Ray.
He might.
You might. We love you, Yuki. I agree. You already have two absolute stud bats in Soto and Vlad, and it's kind of crazy to think that you actually have the pieces to maybe go out and get a third one, but you do. And if you play your cards right, I think you could get a guy like Bryce Harper. So I certainly hope you don't, but I also wouldn't be surprised if you do. I did put a hot take in the chat earlier this week that you would have Harper by the start of the season, and it is now documented on the spreadsheet. So
that is there for all eternity.
It is there for all eternity. Speaking of me, I'm up next, and on my Christmas list, I initially said any prospect, but we decided to go with names. So in the spirit of selecting names, I'll say Jordan Westburg is a shortstop prospect for the Orioles. I've wanted him for a while. Alex and Zach drafted him in the third round last year. I thought he was going to go undrafted. He had a very nice year. As we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, I did a great job of really acquiring assets to build up the farm this winter, and then in about a 24-hour span, I basically tore it all apart. So getting a guy like Westberg would definitely help a farm system that just lost a lot.
Yeah, no, he would. I think him and I guess Kobe Mayo, another Orioles pop-up prospect, as you described them last week. I think I like Westberg certainly better, but he had a solid breakout season. He'd be a great fit on your team.
Absolutely. Let's move on to Connor here under Connor's tree. I think he wants Justin Turner.
I think he does.
He might disagree. He gives a name in our later segment that we could have easily put here, but we thought it'd be more fun to hear Connor's logic behind it there. So we left it over there. But yeah, why don't you explain our logic for this one?
Yeah, I think Connor, he could use another bat. He's got that young pitching. But I think if Sal Perez regresses like we think he might, he could use another bat in that lineup. He's got those young guys. He's got Verdugo, but he really doesn't have any veteran presences in his dugout, I guess. Turner's very reliable, and he would instantly become his best or second to best bat.
Yeah, I feel like Turner is being a bit underrated. I mean, it's kind of like what Nelson Cruz is facing nowadays, kind of that old age penalty, except like Turner actually still plays the position. He's 37. He had a 127 WRC plus last year. I mean, he's still really good and really consistent. I don't think he'd be all that expensive, and I think he'd be a really good fit in his lineup. Side note, remember when the Reds traded Justin Turner to the Orioles?
I do.
Yeah. What could have been for both of our teams?
What could have been indeed.
I guess in our defense, he didn't really break out until his age 29 season. So, but
yeah, neither of us really had a chance.
Yeah. Nonetheless, there's one more team left. And under Eric's Christmas tree, he already got the present I think he wants the most, and that was the championship. But in terms of other Christmas gifts, we say he could want Anthony Rizzo.
Yeah, so this is the third first baseman we've said. A lot of teams are thin at first base.
Also, the third member of your team.
Yeah, third member of my team. And I think Eric could use a first baseman. Jared Walsh struggled down the stretch. Frank Schwindel, I know Eric says he's on board with Frank Schwindel, but I don't really believe him. He had a great season. And then there's Bobby Dahlbeck, who should probably be cut. And I think Rizzo would give him some stability. His price, I mean, it would be high, but it wouldn't be certainly what it would have been this time last year. I think you were saying that me and Eric would probably both realize Rizzo has lost a step, but he also still contributes quite a bit in a lot of important categories. And I think Eric would be happy to have him. He'd fit well in that team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little lower than you on Rizzo now. I mean, I feel like a lot of what Rizzo did is a little bit replaceable. If he performs more like last year, I do think there's a realistic chance that he bounces back a bit. But like, and Eric's not going to like hearing this, and I can't wait for Eric to chat us as soon as he listens to this, being like, Frank Schwindel is good, but I don't have a ton of faith in Frank Schwindel next year. He's a 29-year-old journeyman who just happened to have like a little, hot stretch there. I'm not buying it. I'd rather, if the price is right on Rizzo, I think I'd rather have him. I don't know if it's totally like a necessity for Eric. But if the price is right, I think that it's certainly, a worthwhile option to consider.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's our Christmas list. Jaron Duran for Daniel and Greg, Luis Patino for Yuki, Esther Cortez Jr. for Andrew, Adam Frazier for Alex and Zach, Kyle Schwarber for Ruthvik, Logan Gilbert for Clayton and Jake, Jesus Aguilar for Anthony, Joey Bart for EVO, Bryce Harper for you, Jordan Westberg for me, or honestly, really any half decent prospect, Justin Turner for Connor, and Anthony Rizzo for Eric. I'll be curious to see if any of these players end up on this the teams that we listed by the end of next year when we do this again.
Yeah, we will see. And let's move on to the trades.
Yes.
Shall we?
Yes, I have been very excited to talk about this all day. As you all know, I was involved in all of the trades this week, so there's going to be a lot of talking about me. And
oh boy,
I hate talking about myself, funnily enough, but I can talk about my fantasy team for hours. So buckle up, everyone. It's going to be a good one. Do we want to start with the smaller trades first, or start right with the blockbuster that went down?
Let's start with the first one. That was the first of the 3 trades you made. And this was the blockbuster. Let's get right at it. You traded for Julio Urias, as well as a second. And you gave up Luis Patino, someone we've talked about a lot, Luis Angel Acuna, and 2 first rounders, the number 6 and number 9. You gave up a lot for him. What was your logic with the trade?
Yeah, this is definitely a tough one. I did, definitely take some time to consider this. Ultimately, I've been looking through different both dynasty rankings, seasonal rankings, trying to get an idea of where people valued Julio Urias. And interestingly, I'm definitely, you could find us somewhere on one of the episodes we recorded. When Urias was traded last offseason, I was a little skeptical because I was like, well, the Dodgers never let him pitch like too many innings. Like, is he actually good? Like, is he going to break out? I know he's still young. He's been around forever. He started 15 games at the age of 19 with the Dodgers, but he finally threw a full season this year, 185 and 2/3 innings. He had 195 strikeouts, a 2.96 ERA, a 9.45 K per 9, 1.84 walk per 9, 0.92 homer per 9, a 3.13 FIP. All those numbers are really fantastic. That added up to 13th on our player rater. All of these rankings I've looked at for him, both the dynasty and the seasonal ones, have him kind of as a consensus top 10 pitcher. And interestingly, basically in every list right at like 9 or 10. Like I haven't not seen a lot of deviation. So I feel like a lot of people are getting on the Julio Urias hype train. I think there is a little bit of a question mark of whether he's going to be able to repeat this next year innings wise, just given that he hadn't really pitched this level of innings the last 5 years before this. But I don't see a reason why the Dodgers are going to limit him in any way. I fully expect them to use him and Walker Buehler kind of as workhorses. I buy into the talent here, and I personally think he's probably a top 10 to 15 starting pitcher. And most importantly, he's only going to be 25 next year. So I feel like I'm buying about 6 to 7 years of prime Urias, and that becomes key when I look at what I gave up. I gave up Luis Patino, who I really like. Cam is probably very happy he never has to hear me talk about him again. I might have made that joke earlier in the podcast. But he definitely has some question marks, and it's interesting. I could see him kind of going down the Urias career path where it takes him a couple of years for them to really give him full innings and for him to break out. And maybe it doesn't come. He is still kind of a high variance guy. So while I was content to let him sit in the back of my rotation, and see if he could blossom into that guy, being able to get a guy like Urias, I was willing to give him up. Acuna was not really super relevant. I don't think he's going to be all that good. The 9th overall pick was not too hard for me to give up. I mean, I think that's going to be about a top 100 prospect. There were a couple guys I was eyeing around there, but nobody I'm really losing sleep over. I do think, as I've said before, there's a top 6 or 7 in this draft. It's not like last year's draft where I thought there were some really high quality players at 9 that I'd really be missing out on if I wasn't able to pick there. But that's why giving up the 6th overall pick was really tough. I thought that was going to kind of be the centerpiece of rebuilding my farm system. But to be able to get a top 10 or 15 dynasty starting pitcher who's only going to be 25, you're going to have to be willing to give up a little bit. And, I ultimately thought, if I had to give up 6 to get that done, I will. So ultimately did that. I will say I also I like this from my perspective, getting Urias to really round out an elite rotation. But I also think for Alex and Zach, they did really nice here. They now have 3 first-round picks, 5, 6, and 9. Patino, I think, is going to be really solid in their rotation. And I know they've liked Acuna for a while, so he was a nice throw in there. I'm picturing Cole, Woodruff, Noah, Flaherty, Fried, and Urias at the top of my rotation, and I'm salivating. So, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. You seem a bit more conflicted about this than I do, but I just talked for a while, so you take it away.
Yeah. So I was a little surprised when I first saw this trade that you gave up a lot of pieces that you've talked about being really high on. You had me convinced that you were going to hold on to Patino and kind of slot him in at the back of your rotation, hope he breaks out this year. And number 6, I mean, that's a very valuable pick because you can just take whoever is left of the top guys. There is a tier break after 6 or 7, depending on what you think of Suzuki. And really, I wasn't super aware of how good of a season Urias had. I was aware that he had 20 wins, but I kind of, which is, it's rare, but it's also not important in fantasy. But I was kind of under the impression that, yeah, he got 20 wins and no one cares because he didn't have a great season. That was my kind of reaction to that. So I thought you maybe overpaid for him, looked at some rankings that weren't for quality starts league, saw him ranked highly, pulled the trigger. But really, he had a great year, and his StatCast page is really solid. I think he's a good get for your team, especially with him being young. He's maybe the type of guy that I could have gone after, but seeing the price that you paid for him, I don't know how comfortable I would have been because you really gave up a lot. And Alex has got to be happy with that return. Now he's picking 5, 6, and 9 in this upcoming draft. So it's a blockbuster. I think you gave up a lot, and it has the potential to go kind of south for you if Urias gets hurt. But if he continues to break out, then you've got yourself another ace.
Yeah, I think, but I think you could say that about any pitcher, though. It's a lot of it's dependent on health. But yeah, I mean, I think he is another ace. You're right about the StatCast page. I forgot to pull that up. It's all blood red, and the wins are obviously nice for him personally, but I honestly forgot he had the 20 wins until after I made the trade, so I wasn't even thinking about the wins. And it seemed like other teams were interested in him too. Zane made a pretty interesting offer. I know Eric wanted to get in on the action, but Alex never responded to him. So, I think this is just really going to work out for both sides. I will say one other thing. I think this trade had to be just the way it worked out with Urias is very exact. I think had Urias been like 2 years older, had he been like 27 or 28, and I thought I wasn't getting his full prime, I don't think I pulled a trigger on this deal because I feel like that is a lot to give up for not too many years of prime level production. The fact I'm getting his age, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, that could be like 8 prime seasons easily. I thought that made me a lot more comfortable pulling the trigger here. So just wanted to add that. Anything else you want to add, or do you want to get into these other 2 trades?
No, let's go on quickly to the next ones. The second one was the smallest of the 3. You traded Nick Bitsko and EBO's 2022 third. That is pick 32 to Anthony for Miles Straw. This one kind of reminded me a little bit perhaps of my trade for Harrison Bader. I think Straw and Bader are kind of similar players. They give you some steals without not the highest amount of steals upside, but not the lowest everything else downside. So kind of interesting players. What did you think about this trade?
Yeah, I think you and I disagree a bit on the steals upside, and I'm about to tell you why. There were only 3 players in the major leagues last year who had more steals than Miles Straw. Starling Marte had 47, Whit Merrifield had 40, Trey Turner had 32. Miles Straw had 30, Cedric Mullins had 30, and Tommy Edman had 30. And when if you look at the splits between Miles Straw's time in Houston and in Cleveland, he had more stolen bases in Cleveland despite playing in fewer games. Zips has him projected to get 31 steals next year. I low-key could see that number trending more towards like 35, maybe even 40, because Cleveland does like to run a lot. He's young. He's only 27. Unlike some of the speed guys, like Merrifield only had a 317 OBP this year. Edman only had a 308. We all know about like Alberto Mondesi's OBP troubles. Straw has no problems getting on base. He walked at a 10% clip or a 10.5% clip this past year, and he had a 350 OBP. So, you know, and batting in front of like Jose Ramirez, Framil Reyes, I think will score a lot. He only hit 4 home runs. He's not going to get a ton of ribbies, but I thought I was going to have a couple more stolen base threats last year. I ended up only having one guy with double-digit steals. That was Tatis. I'm hoping maybe Yelich and Biggio bounce back in those categories a bit, but I low-key think this could be my most impactful move of the offseason because it really helps in a category that I have just pretty much since the beginning of the league have not really done well, and I've done very well in all the other offensive categories. I just can't seem to figure out steals. One other reason I made this trade, and I don't usually like to carry 3 bench bats, but we all know Max Muncy has a UCL issue. He got hurt on the last day of the regular season. The reports are kind of vague, but also a little ominous. Maybe he's back, sometime at the start of the season. Maybe he needs Tommy John and he misses a full season. I know the recovery is going a bit slow. So I'm kind of operating on the assumption that I won't have Max Muncy to start this season. So I wanted to get that extra depth. Didn't want to pay a lot for a bat. And, when Anthony came out with this offer, I was like, yeah, good price. I was going to jump on it. I like Bitsko. I think the upside's high, but he's coming off an injury, and there's no such thing as a pitching prospect. I think there's a lot of variance, but I do think he's a solid get for Anthony to gamble on.
Yeah, I think he could be.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And yeah, there was one final trade you made. This one was a little later. You sent reliever Will Smith, Alex and Zach's 2025 second, and Jake and Clayton's 2022 third. That is pick number 30. To Connor for Marcus Stroman. And we're going to talk about this later in the episode, so we don't need to do a deep dive. But what do you think about Marcus Stroman and this deal?
Yeah. So, obviously Will Smith had a very good year, saving 37 games. The peripherals weren't as kind to him. I think they thought he had about a 4th FIP. There were some very good relievers in front of him, i.e. Luke Jackson, who maybe I feel like could potentially threaten that job if Will Smith struggles a bit. He didn't always pitch the cleanest innings, but I do think the upside with him is really high. He was still a top 15 reliever this year, according to the player rater. And Connor really wanted a reliever. I really like Stroman just sort of consistency. Now, there's not a ton of upside, although I did read that he did kind of use, I believe, his splitter a bit more this year to help get some differentiation with his other pitches. And it did lead to a career high K rate. And he strikes me as the type of guy who just kind of keeps tinkering and kind of like keeps, striving to improve a bit. So, career high K rate this year, career low walk rate, which was or second lowest walk rate of his career. His last 3 full seasons, 179 innings, 184 in the third, and 201 innings, 302 ERA, 322 ERA, 309 ERA. All his FIPS are sub 4. So, I think he's just a consistent mid to back of the rotation starter. I think maybe he actually cracks that 200 inning threshold again in Chicago with, an ERA that maybe isn't as low as the 3.02 he had this year. But even if he gives me something kind of in the low to mid threes with those 200 innings, I'm going to be really happy with it. And it'll help me hedge my bets against maybe a guy like a Flaherty or Urias where, maybe you think, injury or innings restrictions, whatever. So I think this is a classic need for need deal. I liked it for both sides. And this might be my favorite rotation I've put together yet. I'll go on the record as saying that.
Yeah, I think you really sold Will Smith at his highest value after he pitched really well in the playoffs. I don't think he's going to have another season or another run like that. So I think, that you really sold him at the best possible time. And Stroman, I guess he's always been a little iffy at times. So it kind of remains to see what sort of season he's going to have this year. But I think his ceiling is very high, and he's another good get for you, and you got a great rotation there.
Yeah. Boy, I'm going to have so much fun just watching this rotation pitch this year. And unlike last year when I said that and I still was rostering Patrick Corbin, I'll actually be rostering, somebody who's not Patrick Corbin. So, no, it'll be good.
It will be, but you never know who can turn into Patrick Corbin suddenly.
That is true. I'd like to think none of my guys are going to turn into Patrick Corbin suddenly, although Kyle Hendricks is concerning me a bit. But thankfully, I'm only relying on him as my 10th starter this year and not as like my SP6 or something like I was last year.
That is true.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was all the trades. Is there anything else we wanted to talk about today?
So yeah, Cam and I decided to join another Dynasty Baseball League. We are co-owning a team in a Fantrax league. It's a $50 a buy-in. So Cam and I split the cost. We're going to be co-owners, and Jake and Eric are also in that league. So far, we have picked Tatis with the 4th overall pick. Eric got Bo Bichette with the 7th overall pick. And Jake at 14 went with Luis Robert and then swung around in 17 and picked the first prospect. He got Bobby Witt Jr. I'm excited. I love Dynasty Baseball. I needed some more to fill in the raging desire to play, and it's interesting. 15 team roto league, so different format, but I'm looking forward to it. What are your thoughts, Cam?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think I'm certainly not going to pay anywhere near as much attention to that as I'm paying attention to this league, but it'll be kind of fun to co-own a team together. That was the main draw of it for me. We've kind of seen our opinions become very similar while doing the podcast, and it'll be fun to own a team together in a league. This was a league that Jake found and invited us all into, and we and Eric took him up on the offer. And I think it'll just be really, really interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I could have run this team on my own if I really wanted to, but like literally my first thought when I signed up, and I just kind of signed up quickly because Jake was like, hey, there's one spot left. So I literally like busted out my phone and signed up. I was like, I need somebody else around with me because I don't think I have the commitment to do a second league just by myself and, everything that comes into a dynasty league. So I'm glad I got you on board. And boy, it's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, no, it really is. But yeah, no, that's basically all we had. We're going to take a quick break right now, and we will be back with Connor.
Sock it to me, Santa. You know where it's at. Sock it to me, Santa. I want a baseball bat. This won't be a drag. Santa's got a brand new bag. I said, come on, dance. Come on, pray.
Okay, we are joined now by Connor, one half of the famous duo of Connor and Connor, owners of the Off-White Sox. How are you doing today, Connor?
I'm doing good. Pretty good. Yeah. Excited to talk about our team.
Awesome. Yeah, and we have a lot to talk about. This is your first appearance on the show since your miraculous run to the finals this past season, toppling Sahil here in the semis.
I'm still salty.
But yeah, you haven't really had a chance to talk about your finals run. But before you talk about that, let's talk about we're recording this on December 20th. 4 months ago today was the trade deadline where you came out the big winner, where you acquired both Salvador Perez and Robbie Ray. Massive day for you. Why don't you talk about how that day went down for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I was going into the day and I was definitely fighting for a playoff spot. And I was pretty confident I was going to make the playoffs, but to make it any further, I kind of realized I needed to acquire a little bit more. So I targeted starting pitching and catcher because my catcher was Travis Beno, who was fine for a catcher, but nothing really special. I know Ruthvick was shopping Perez around to a bunch of teams. So I was working on a Perez deal, so got Perez and it was going to be originally, I think, a lot different. I don't remember the exact details, but then he mentioned he was interested in Barrios. So I'm like, I was high on Barrios, and I definitely like him, but I think to get Perez, who's easily the best catcher and probably one of the best players in fantasy baseball last year, for 2 months where he was even better the 2 months I had him than when he was out for the season, plus a decent prospect pitcher and M-SABR, who's just a good throw-in to take the spot from Barrios, and plus a first, even though it's probably going to be a late first. So like once we agree on that, I jumped on it because I think that deal turned out great for me, and Perez easily led me to the finals, beating Sahil in the semis. And then with Robbie Ray too, so once I traded Barrios, I won another ace because Barrios was not my best ace, but he was definitely probably my second best pitcher behind Giolito. So then I just inquired about Robbie Ray, and McMahon was definitely a player I liked, and he definitely had a good season, but I got him as part of the Hurricane Connor. So trading away Kieboom and Mauricio, and I got McMahon and Edmonds. Like, McMahon was part of that deal with Edmund, but I definitely think Robbie Ray was definitely a huge upgrade because he won the Cy Young, and I think he can definitely continue it. And then Gradiball was also part of, I think, the big large trade with me and Andrew, the 16-player deal or something. Yeah. So for me in that deal, he was kind of a bigger piece, but then this season wasn't his best, and he's also just a reliever, so he can be replaced easier. So, and much easier to find than a lead starting pitcher. So when we agreed on that, I decided to get Robbie Ray as well, and it's just a second nice to have. And then I also got John Means, who helped down the stretch with a few quality starts here and there.
Yeah, it all comes back to Hurricane Connor. Everything does.
No, it's funny because I feel like Cam and I on the show or on the podcast definitely like we're not a fan of some of those moves, but I'm pretty sure every single one of those trades like panned out for you one way or another. Like either you kept the player, like you kept Tommy Edman, and he was really good, and then like you traded McMahon. Let's see, you traded away Evan White, who was irrelevant. Like just a great trade week for you there. And then I mean, like,
and not to mention McMahon was great the first half of the season.
Oh yeah. And
then the other trade was Krylov for Verdugo.
And Verdugo's really good down the stretch.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah. Oh man. I mean, like, I feel like 10 years from now, when we look back at like the most like that it's single team upgraded their team like in a day, like in a single day, I think it has to be August 20th, 2021 with you getting Ray and Perez, like no doubt. Like that's just nuts. I mean, the top fantasy catcher and the AL Cy Young just in a matter of like a couple hours. I mean, especially at least for me, I know the Ray deal felt like it came out of nowhere. Like I did not realize that. I knew Ray was kind of on the block, but I didn't expect.
Came out of nowhere for me too, because I thought I was trading for him.
Oh no, it definitely came out of nowhere for me too. Like I inquired about him after I think after I traded away Barrios, and I was like, yeah, he's available. So he's like, yeah, I'm interested in McMahon. We pretty much agreed to it in the last like 2 hours of the deadline.
Oh,
Oh man, that's. Hold on. Let's talk about the what happened after those trades. I mean, you beat EBO, I believe, in the first round. Then you upset me in the second round. You made it to the finals. Just how was that? How did you feel about that playoff run? Like, what was going on in your head? Because I'm sure, I know Cam and I in our power rankings before the season didn't necessarily have you high up. I think, Cam, you said that you thought Conor could be like number 7 if like a bunch of things broke right.
Yeah, well, we both had Conor at 11. I was more optimistic. I was thinking if things go right, you could be as high as 7 with the pitching. But that was kind of my upper bound, my most optimistic prediction.
Yeah, so like for me going into the season, I definitely thought I was higher than 11. Like you guys ranked me, but that's just like I thought I was gonna fight for like the last playoff spots, like fight between like the 5 and 7 range, and hopefully squeeze in the playoffs and maybe make it past the first round, but then probably lose to one of you two or Eric in the semis or something like that. And I'd be pretty happy with that season. But then just my team just performed very well, especially down the stretch, and allowed me to be the 4th seed and then come into the playoffs, beat EBO, who probably because of their reliever strategy didn't fully work out for them. And then especially in the semis, so right before the semis, Sahil and I were both in an arbor for the Michigan-Washington game, and we were talking about our matchup, and I'm like, I'm probably just going to get smacked, but I'm happy with my season. I didn't think I was going to get it any further than that, and then just watching it unfold during the week, like I was just I was still in it, and then I eventually pulled out a win, and then obviously the finals didn't go exactly how I wanted it to, and Eric won, but my team finished 2nd in the league after only a short rebuild. After being hated, not the best team in the league, definitely, and just to be able to make it to the finals of the league in a few years, I think really it shows my team is pretty well handled, and especially even with my team, like I'd say 3 of my best bats were out for the majority of the season. Like Eloy was out for the first half, Robert was out for a few months, and I had Mondesi as well at the beginning of the season, or up until a week ago, and like he was out for at least the majority of the season too. So like, that's 3 of my star bats were out for a majority of the season, and to make it to the top 4 seed and then the playoffs was a big compliment for my team this year.
No, absolutely, certainly impressive, and it makes me excited. Like, although I would have liked to have been in the finals myself, it was nice to see some different faces there. It's really just been me, Eric, and EVO those first 3 years in the finals, and then also just like it's exciting to see some of these teams that maybe started off not doing as well the first couple seasons kind of rise up, and you're starting to see kind of the ebbs and the flows in the league where, you know, some of the teams who were at the top early on are not at the top anymore, and vice versa. So, boy, I mean, as a general fan of chaos, I really liked to see how this all played out, and just to see these upsets as someone who was directly affected by that upset. I'm not so happy, but I still distinctly remember the moment sitting on your couch talking about that. And if I had known then what I knew now, that you were going to upset me, like, oh man, that's just crazy. But I mean, kudos to your team. I mean, you know, they were absolutely fantastic this year. And, you know, hopefully hopefully for your sake, you actually win next year instead of losing in the finals to Eric, and we're not handing him yet another championship.
Definitely.
Do we want to get into the offseason now, Cam?
Yeah, let's get into the off season. Yeah, so you back at the end of October. This is the first one we wanted to talk about was that Mondesi deal you mentioned. You traded Mondesi, Rodon, and a first and a second to the EBO, but you acquired Trevor Story and Paul Goldschmidt, giving you two more huge infield bats. We don't know where Story's going to land, so he's maybe a little bit riskier. But Goldschmidt had a great year. What were you thinking about this deal?
Yeah, so as I said before, like Mondesi was like, I feel like Mondesi and his steals are huge, but he kind of hurt me down the stretch because he was only playing like one game, maybe two games a series if I was lucky. So he wasn't really playing much. So he was just taking up a roster spot, but I obviously couldn't drop him because he's Mondesi. So like, he was just there and he would get me a steal, but that was about it. And like he was a big injury risk last season, and the Royals even talking about limiting his playing time even more next season, so he maybe not have to not on the IL. So as much as I didn't want to trade him, it made sense. And then Rodon was kind of the same way. Like his injuries worried me, and like as a White Sox fan, like I hope they re-signed him, but when they didn't, it kind of worried me more because he had a great season, and if they trusted him, they would have re-signed him because they had some money to spend. So I think they easily could re-sign him, and with him being kind of 50-50 in the late playoffs and everything for like the actual MLB playoffs, not. And then it's like he worried me there, and then the picks were just to make the deal go through. But then acquiring Story and Goldschmidt. So Story I like because I was trading him away Mondesi. So the Story gives me more, I think, than Mondesi. Obviously, Story's older, and we don't know exactly where he'll play, but I think he'll be able to contribute a lot more than Mondesi. And then one of my goals for the offseason was to get a first baseman. Like my first baseman for most of the season was Jesus Aguilar, who had a very good season with 91 RBIs and everything like that. But that's not the most repeatable thing, especially with Miami. So, and he was hurt down the stretch in the playoffs and everything. And so I was playing like Andrew Vaughn there, who I think can definitely turn into a good player at some point, but I think he probably needs another year and a half to become like the superstar first baseman that Paul Goldschmidt is. So my plan with Goldschmidt is it's like when EBO was talking about trading the players on the bench, Story and Goldschmidt both interested me, and Goldschmidt I'm hoping can be the gap between, I guess, Jesus Aguilar last year, but obviously an upgrade over that. And then just the gap until Andrew Vaughn is more of an all-star caliber player, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I personally like this trade a lot for you. I mean, I thought Goldschmidt was arguably a little bit underrated last year. I feel like he wasn't getting as much attention for the awesome season that he had, but I think his bat's going to age well. I think the concerns of Story leaving Colorado are a little overblown too. And I know we've covered this trade pretty extensively, so I won't go too deep into this here. But I mean, I thought those are two great additions for your offense. I think it looks a lot better and a lot less riskier into health. I definitely agree with that. Mondesi and Rodon just cannot seem to stay healthy. Anything else you wanted to add about this trade, Cam? Any thoughts?
No, I think, Mondesi, I've never been a fan of that style of player. I think it's not really worth the drop in every other category to get a extra stolen base or two every week. Whereas you can just trade for Miles Straw, for example. Like in the trade that we talked about earlier in the episode. So I think using him as a centerpiece to get two big sluggers, I think is a great deal for you. But moving on to another deal you made this offseason, This was the one that you made earlier today. This is the one we wanted to talk about. You traded Marcus Stroman to Sahil for Will Smith, a second rounder far in the future, and a third rounder this year, which I believe is pick number 30. Is that correct?
30.
Yeah. And to clarify for the listeners, it is Will Smith, the reliever.
Will Smith, the reliever, of course.
Yeah. Not the actor.
But yeah, what went into this deal?
Yeah, so we were going back and forth a little bit on this deal, and I was kind of tempted to trade Stroman because I was higher on him than some of my other pitchers, but one of my other goals this offseason was to get another higher end reliever to pair with Josh Hader, because Hader was really my only real saves this offseason, the past season. So I was trying to get another big save guy so I wasn't just relying on Hader's 1 to 2, maybe 1 or 2 saves a week. So I'd hopefully be able to win saves more often. So that was a big target this offseason for me. And then the picks are just nice to have, especially with just trades. And then so with Stroman, like I said, I was more tempted to trade him, especially compared to some of my other pitchers, but he's definitely older, and I felt like getting Will Smith, who was, I think, top 5 in the league in saves last year, it just allowed me to get a solid reliever for a starting pitcher where we're at a surplus, because I still have 1, 2, 3. Like I still have 7 starters, which I think is good, and I have now 2 very solid closers with probably one the best closer in the game. So that, yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I talked about this earlier on the podcast, so I'll just quickly say it since we have you. Maybe we could compare our notes here. I thought Stroman was a very high quality starting pitcher. I think the move to Chicago is going to be good for him. And I was looking for another starter to round out my rotation. I thought Will Smith was expendable. He was a little more expendable for me when I still had Raisel Iglesias when we first started talking about the potential of this deal, but I still ultimately deemed him as someone I could deal because I like my other relievers. You're right. I mean, he had 37 saves last year. He's closing for a team that just won the World Series. So I think he's a great addition for you. The picks are a nice bonus. I feel like this is a classic need for need trade, and I think we both come out as winners here. I'm really happy with this, and you seem really happy too. So happy for the both of us here. Anything you want to add, Cam?
No, but I guess in general, let's kind of talk more about your off-season plans, your overarching needs and wants for your team. Do you have a plan for this off-season? And do you expect the remainder of the offseason to be a busy one or a quiet one?
So I don't know if we'll be super busy, but I'm still looking to make a trade or 2 at least. So I going into the offseason, I knew I wanted to get a first baseman and another reliever, which I did with Goldschmidt and Will Smith, just like I said. But then looking at my team in the past few days, I'm actually looking to acquire another solid bench bat, maybe another outfielder. Just because with Rosario, who knows what he'll sign, and Grichuk is probably going to split time because he's not the best anymore. So probably not looking to acquire that outfielder, and then a nice bench bat who can plug in and fill in on days where some of my starters aren't going. So I think just another batter or 2 is my main goal, and I'm definitely competing this year, obviously, because I made it to the final. So hopefully to add that 1 or 2 solid pieces to get me to win in the finals instead of losing in the finals.
Definitely. I mean, I think you've made a lot of good moves already this offseason. I think you've acquired quite a few major league pieces to really win now. And I think you're right. I think there's definitely a couple moves that maybe you could make, but I think even if you go to opening day with this roster, I think this is a roster, again, that's ready to compete for a championship like you did last year. I'd say that one player that interests me in particular just with the fact that you do have Sal Perez as Joey Bart, because now that Buster Posey is retired, it looks like he's going to be a starting catcher. Do you think he's someone that you want to move, or do you think he's somebody that you're going to hang on to and, you know, use him as the successor on your team to Sal Perez?
Yeah, so my plan with Bart is probably to trade him. Like, I definitely would have kept him if I did not have do the trade for Cortaya. But I think with Cortaya, Perez will be able to play until Cortaya is ready, and hopefully Cortaya is good. Obviously, he's a prospect, so who knows? But so I think my plan is to trade Bart for the right, obviously for the right price. But I definitely think Bart could be is definitely expendable now with Perez on my team, who played so many games last season. I don't really need to have a backup catcher.
Definitely. Yeah, I know there are definitely some teams in this league who cough, cough, EBO, rostering no catcher. So I'm sure you'll be able to, you know, work out something. I'm sure somebody would love to have Joey Bart. I know if I didn't have Wilson Contreras, he'd definitely be somebody I'd more have my eye on.
But on the topic of prospects, so your farm system for the first few years of the league was top of the table, or if not second. But right now it's looking much more slim than it was when you were rebuilding. And obviously a lot of that was to get the pieces to get you where you are now. But certain guys such as Forrest Whitley, Brennan McKay, maybe Nate Pearson, but he's still yet to prove himself. But those guys have kind of seen their stock take a hit, and you haven't really had a lot of guys replace them. I know I like Matt Cantorino, as well as a couple other guys, but in general, your farm system's looking a lot worse than it was even just a year and a half ago. Is this something you're looking to address, or are you just in full win now, sell the farm mode? You've got 2 second rounders, but no first rounders coming up this year.
Yeah, so like I think this year I'm more focused on building a major league roster and then starting again next season. Hopefully, when I think my team's in a pretty good spot, I'll work on improving the farm again. But I think with my team now, obviously I have some younger pieces still with like Eloy and Robert and everything like that. But I definitely have some not aging players, but some slightly older players, especially with Goldschmidt and Story and Perez and everything like that. So I think just trying to get my team in a solid place now is what I'm focusing on, my major league team, and then I'll focus back on prospects and picks, maybe throughout the season. But I think that will be a next off-season project of more focusing on prospects and picks again.
No, definitely. I feel like, you know, you're coming off this momentum of, you know, making it to the finals. I mean, I definitely think it's smart to just kind of keep your foot on the pedal and keep going for it, because, you know, anything you can do to win a championship, I feel like is just so important. And it seems like you're on that track right now. Absolutely. Is there anything else you wanted to ask Cam?
I guess the one thing that I wanted to ask is the question that we ask every time. And that is there any player on a different team that you haven't asked about, but you may be interested in acquiring at some point this offseason, or that you have your eye on?
So I actually inquired about a whole bunch of players today, we'll see. But I think one player who I didn't inquire about, who probably is not available, but Rafael Devers is someone who I would be very interested in. He's probably not being moved, but I've not inquired about him yet. So I think that would be the player that I will say.
That's a big one.
Yeah,
I'm curious. I can see Ruth Vick moving him in the right deal. Ruth Vick doesn't strike me as the type that's like just going to hold on to a player for the sake of holding on to a player. But boy, yeah, he would definitely be an expensive one, but he would be a huge upgrade if you'd be able to pull that off. No, I love me some Rafael Devers. He is great. Especially, I feel like third base is so thin. Having an elite option like that is huge. That's a good answer. We had some really fun answers to this question last year. I'm glad we're doing it again.
Yeah, no, and I like a bold answer like Devers too.
Yeah. Well, Devers is obviously definitely one of the higher end options, but I think if you asked me that question earlier today, I would have given you different answers, but I inquired about a whole bunch of people today, so we'll see where those trade talks go.
Yeah, certainly. And my answer last year was actually on your team. It was Tristan McKenzie. I think I did reach out at some point. I'm sure the price is a lot cheaper now than it was this time last year. I'd still potentially be open to something.
All right. We'll see about that.
He did end the season pretty hot, if I remember correctly. He did have a few starts there that looked really good. I definitely still think he's got a lot of potential. We definitely have to look back and see what people answered last year to these questions. I'd be really curious to see if they ended up getting any of these players.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But I think that was all the questions I had. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Cam, before we wrap this up?
No, that was it. Best of luck this season, Connor. And hopefully we'll see you back in the finals.
Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully it gets one of you two this time.
Hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. It would be fitting if our rematch after last year's semis debacle was in the finals. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, best of luck this year.
Thank you.
Yep. And I think this may be our last episode of 2021. If so, Happy New Year to everyone. And if Cam and I do sneak one more in next week, we'll see you for one last episode in 2021.
All right. Yep. See you when we see you.
Humbug, well, that's too strong, 'cause it is my favorite holiday. But all this year's been a busy blur. Don't think I have the energy to add to my already mad rush just 'cause it's 'tis the season. The perfect gift for me would be completions and connections left from last year. Ski shop encounter, most interesting. Had his number, but never the time. Most of 81 pass along those lines. So deck those halls, trim those trees, raise up cups of Christmas cheer. I just need to catch my breath. Christmas by myself this year.
This podcast is good.